Andrew awoke one cool autumn morning with a sense of unease that he couldn't quite place. As he sat on the edge of his bed, his phone vibrated insistently on the nightstand. Glancing at the screen, he noticed a missed call from an unknown number, a small detail that should have been inconsequential, but which now pricked at the back of his mind. In that fleeting moment, the seed of doubt was planted. Throughout the day, subtle anomalies began to stitch together a narrative of uncertainty. Isabella, his longtime girlfriend known for her radiant smile and unwavering warmth, had lately seemed distracted. The previous evening, as they shared a quiet dinner, Andrew had caught a glimpse of something peculiar. While answering a message, Isabella's smile wasn't the usual, open, affectionate one. Instead, it was cryptic and fleeting, as if concealing a secret too heavy to share. The memory of that smile lingered in his thoughts like a shadow. At work, Andrew found himself distracted. Every time his phone buzzed, his heart skipped a beat, each notification a reminder of Isabella's recent behavior. Her texts had grown brief and curt, and her laughter, once effervescent, now felt hollow, as if she were performing for an audience rather than sharing a genuine moment with him. Even in their routine weekend coffee meetups, she seemed to be mentally somewhere else, scanning the room with a wariness that was new and unsettling. As dusk approached and he returned home, the house felt strangely silent. While Isabella busied herself in the kitchen, her phone constantly in hand, Andrew tried to dismiss the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Yet, every small detail, the soft murmur of conversations on her phone, the way her eyes darted away when he looked at her, and even the slight hesitation in her voice when she answered simple questions, served as tiny signals in a growing pattern of betrayal. Later that night, lying in the dark, Andrew's thoughts churned. The missed call, the cryptic smile, and the other subtle hints converged into a tapestry of suspicion. He recalled every moment of hesitation, every glance that didn't quite meet his, and every unexplained absence that punctuated their otherwise harmonious life. The trust he had so firmly believed in now wavered like a candle flickering in a gentle breeze. In the solitude of his quiet room, Andrew resolved to watch more closely, to piece together the hidden clues of a story he had never wanted to suspect. Though the spark of doubt was small, he knew it had the potential to ignite a blaze of revelation, one that could either reaffirm the bonds of love or shatter them completely. And so, with a heavy heart and a determined spirit, he braced himself for the unsettling journey into the truth. Over the following days, Andrew's initial spark of doubt evolved into a persistent, unsettling presence in his mind. Every action, every whisper of conversation between Isabella and her phone was now under his discreet scrutiny. The cozy routines of their shared life had taken on a different hue, one tinted with secrets and silent misgivings. Each morning, as the first light filtered through the curtains, Andrew began to notice the subtle shifts in Isabella's behavior. The way she clutched her phone tightly in her hand, even during their quiet breakfast moments, seemed deliberate, almost as if she was guarding a treasure of hidden conversations. Her smiles, once warm and genuine, now carried a fleeting, guarded quality that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Andrew's thoughts raced as he silently catalogued these discrepancies, each one a small fragment of an emerging mosaic of betrayal. Determined not to let his growing suspicions be known, Andrew turned into a silent observer. He started by noting the peculiar timing of her phone calls. Often, in the late afternoon when the house was bathed in a soft, diffused light, her phone would buzz unexpectedly. Instead of the relaxed chatter he was accustomed to, she would respond in hushed tones, her eyes darting towards the door as if expecting someone. Each of these moments deepened his unease and nudged him further down a path of cautious investigation. One particularly revealing evening, Isabella mentioned a quick errand to run, a statement that previously would have been met with a casual, "Sure, go ahead." But tonight, Her tone was laced with an inexplicable urgency. Andrew decided to step outside under the pretext of taking out the trash. From a discreet distance across the street, he watched as she hurriedly walked toward a nondescript building. Her pace was brisk and determined, and every so often she would glance over her shoulder as if aware of being followed. The sight sent a chill down his spine and confirmed that something was amiss. Late at night, the quiet hum of the sleeping city seemed to amplify his inner turmoil. Lying in bed, Andrew could hear the occasional muffled conversation seeping through the thin walls. There was one instance in particular, a soft, hurried exchange of words over the phone, that resonated deeply with him. The conversation was too vague to grasp fully, yet it carried the unmistakable weight of secrecy and hidden rendezvous. Each whisper of that night served as another clue in the intricate puzzle he was painstakingly assembling. Every unaccounted phone call, every secretive glance, and every unexplained outing painted a clearer picture of deception. In the silence of their once tranquil home, Andrew was slowly, deliberately, piecing together a narrative of betrayal, a narrative that with each passing moment edged him closer to a painful truth he was both dreading and compelled to confront. The shadows in the silence were growing longer, and with them his resolve to uncover the whole story. Each morning Andrew stepped into the new day with a practiced smile, the picture of calm normalcy. Despite the storm of suspicion and sorrow swirling inside him, he mastered the art of pretending that everything was perfectly ordinary. As he sipped his coffee and read the morning headlines, his mind was never far from the small inconsistencies he had noted in Isabella's behavior. Yet, outwardly, he maintained the routine they'd built over years of shared habits, ensuring that nothing about his inner turmoil leaked into their daily life. At breakfast, while Isabella chattered about mundane plans for the day, Andrew nodded and laughed along, carefully concealing the weight of his doubts. Every gesture, every smile was calculated. Beneath the surface, however, he meticulously logged every odd detail. A pause before a laugh, a fleeting glance at her phone, a momentary hesitation when asked about her errands. Each instance was silently recorded in the quiet recesses of his mind. Later that day, in the privacy of his study, he would transfer these fleeting observations into his journal, an ever-growing repository of evidence he hoped would someday confirm his worst fears. Even at work, Andrew's performance was unwavering. In meetings and casual conversations with colleagues, he exhibited the same confident demeanor he'd always shown. Yet, during idle moments, his thoughts drifted back to Isabella's unusual behavior. He recalled the way she'd clutched her purse a little tighter than usual on the drive to work, or how she briefly excused herself to take a phone call in hushed tones, her eyes scanning the room as if checking for an intruder. Every detail, no matter how trivial it might have seemed, was another piece in the puzzle of betrayal he was silently assembling. In the evenings, as the soft glow of sunset filtered through the windows of their shared apartment, Andrew played his part to perfection. He would ask about her day in a warm, engaging tone, all the while storing away the inconsistencies in her stories. When Isabella mentioned a minor delay or a forgotten detail, he simply smiled and reassured her that everything was fine. His calm and unruffled exterior was his shield, a well-practiced mask that hid the turbulence inside. As night fell, once the world around him settled into silence, Andrew would retreat to his study. Under the dim light of a solitary desk lamp, he carefully pieced together the day's observations. Every incongruent smile, every secretive phone call was noted down with precise timestamps and thoughtful comments. This careful documentation was not just a record of betrayal, it was his silent rebellion, a way to reclaim some semblance of control over a situation spiraling into chaos. By day, he lived the life of a loving partner, devoted and engaged. By night, he became a vigilant detective in his own private drama. In mastering the art of normalcy, Andrew had built a fortress of routine that concealed the turmoil within, a facade that allowed him to observe and record the truth, all while preserving the illusion of an ordinary, untroubled life. Andrew's once dormant suspicions had now morphed into a relentless pursuit for truth. Every day brought him closer to the painful reality he feared yet needed to confirm. His secret investigation had become his sole focus, a meticulous hunt for hidden details that would piece together the puzzle of Isabella's betrayal. Late one afternoon, as golden sunlight filtered through his study's window, Andrew began by capturing suspicious text messages. With a steady hand, he snapped screenshots of cryptic messages exchanged on Isabella's phone, texts that were curt, oddly timed, and laced with ambiguous language. Each saved image was meticulously annotated with dates and timestamps, transforming casual communications into a trail of evidence. The seemingly innocent messages, when viewed in isolation, might have been overlooked by anyone else, but for Andrew, every half-sentence hinted at secret rendezvous and concealed truths. Text messages were only the beginning. On several occasions, Andrew managed to capture blurry photos of Isabella leaving their apartment. One evening, he recalled watching from a discreet corner as she hurried out, wrapped in a chic coat and glancing nervously over her shoulder. Although the photographs were far from crystal clear, they provided enough detail to suggest she was not alone. The images, imperfect and fleeting, became silent yet compelling witnesses to her covert behavior. Andrew wasn't content with digital and photographic evidence alone. The human element of her secret life was crucial, and he set about capturing that as well. In the quiet of the night, when the world outside had succumbed to a hushed calm, he quietly positioned a recording device near a thin wall. There, in the stillness, he recorded hushed conversations that occasionally drifted through. The muffled voices were indistinct at times, but every snippet, a whispered name, a coded phrase, the soft murmur of an urgent conversation, added another layer of confirmation to his suspicions. Each recorded fragment was catalogued, another damning piece in the growing mosaic of betrayal. With every new piece of evidence, Andrew's resolve hardened. He began cross-referencing the messages, photos, and recordings, constructing a timeline that painted a steadily darker picture of Isabella's double life. The act of collecting the evidence while emotionally agonizing also provided him a sense of control. It was a way to transform the overwhelming feelings of betrayal into something tangible, a collection of indisputable facts. Late at night, in the solitude of his study, Andrew would pore over his gathered material. Each message, each blurred image, and every hushed snippet of conversation deepened the painful truth he was gradually forced to acknowledge. The evidence, now compiled into a detailed dossier, was as much a testament to his vigilance as it was to the shattering betrayal he had suspected for so long. In that quiet, solitary space, with the soft glow of his computer screen casting long shadows on the walls, Andrew realized that every small, covert act of evidence gathering was leading him inexorably toward a final reckoning, a confrontation that would irrevocably alter the course of his life. In the quiet solitude of his study, Andrew began the painstaking process of decoding the tangled web of deception that had become his life. The dossier he had assembled over the past weeks lay open before him. A chaotic yet damning collection of late-night texts, blurry photographs, and discrete audio recordings. Each piece of evidence was a silent witness to Isabella's hidden life, and now it was time to let them speak for themselves. Late-night texts, once dismissed as innocuous messages, were re-examined with fresh, analytical eyes. Andrew noticed a pattern emerging from the seemingly ordinary digital exchanges. At first glance, the texts were filled with casual banter, but a closer look revealed a secret language, a series of coded phrases and numbers that only the initiated could understand. Phrases like, "The stars are in alignment," and "the moon will rise" appeared repeatedly, followed by sets of digits that defied simple explanation. Andrew spent hours cross-referencing these messages with the timestamps and correlating them with her late-night outings. The realization struck him hard. These messages were not meant for a friend, but for someone who was part of a clandestine meeting, perhaps a lover hidden in plain sight. The fragmented photos added another layer to the unfolding mystery. In one particularly grainy image, Andrew caught a fleeting glimpse of Isabella in a dimly lit cafe. Her posture, the subtle tilt of her head, and the furtive glance she cast over her shoulder hinted at more than mere coincidence. Other images, though blurred and imperfect, depicted her in different settings, at a secluded park bench, near an unmarked building, or in the company of strangers who seemed to vanish as quickly as they appeared. Each image, when analyzed together, suggested a network of meetings that spanned various times and locations. The more he pieced these photos together, the clearer it became that Isabella was leading a double life far beyond what Andrew had ever imagined. As Andrew deciphered the cryptic language and aligned the fragmented snapshots with specific moments in time, his internal conflict deepened. Every new revelation ignited a turbulent mix of emotions: anger, sorrow, and a painful sense of betrayal intermingled with an obsessive need to uncover every hidden truth. Late into the night, he sat hunched over his desk, annotating printouts and digital files, trying to connect the coded messages with the mysterious rendezvous captured in the photos. With each connection made, the damning picture grew ever clearer. Isabella was not only unfaithful, she was entangled in a secret life that spanned more than just a simple affair. The process of decoding these clues became both an intellectual challenge and an emotional crucible for Andrew. Every new discovery fed the raging fire of his internal turmoil. The evidence was irrefutable, a web of lies spun with precision, a betrayal woven into the very fabric of their shared life. In that moment, as he laid bare the truth on his desk, Andrew realized that he had reached a point of no return. The deception was decoded, and with it, the resolve for what would come next grew all the more inevitable. As the final pieces of evidence slid into place, Andrew's life became a study in controlled tension. Each day, his outward routine remained unchanged, a steady cadence of work, conversation, and shared moments with Isabella. But inside, a storm was gathering momentum. The mounting proof of betrayal had transformed his inner world into a battlefield of conflicting emotions. Grief and anger intertwined with a relentless determination to confront the truth. Yet he mastered the art of maintaining a calm facade, meticulously preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Every evening, after Isabella had retired for the night, Andrew would sit alone in the quiet of his study. The soft glow of his desk lamp illuminated scattered pages of notes, annotated screenshots, and printed photos that mapped the treacherous path of her deceit. In that solitary space, the silence was heavy with anticipation. Andrew rehearsed his lines over and over, his voice low and steady as he practiced the confrontation that he both dreaded and longed for. He knew that the words he chose in that critical moment would define not just the end of their relationship, but the reclamation of his shattered dignity. He envisioned the scenario in minute detail, the precise moment when he would present the incontrovertible evidence, the sharp look in his eyes that would speak volumes, and the final words that would cut through the web of lies. Each rehearsal was a careful balancing act. On one hand, he felt the urge to let his anger surge forth like a tidal wave, but on the other, he recognized the necessity of a measured response, one that would leave no room for ambiguity or denial. His inner monologue was a constant reminder that while the storm of emotions raged within, he must remain the picture of unruffled composure until the perfect moment arrived. During the day, Andrew continued to refine his disguise of normalcy. He smiled at Isabella, participated in casual conversations, and engaged in shared routines with an almost eerie precision. Every gesture, every word was chosen to mask the roiling tempest inside him. Yet behind his carefully composed exterior, he was a man planning a decisive move. He plotted each step of the impending confrontation with the precision of a chess master, anticipating every possible reaction and counter-argument. His mind replayed every instance of deception captured in his dossier, reinforcing his resolve and sharpening the clarity of his intentions. The days leading up to the confrontation were filled with an intense, silent preparation. Andrew began to draft a detailed outline of how the moment would unfold, a timeline of revelations that would leave no room for her to escape the truth. The more he planned, the more he understood that the calm he exuded was not one of acceptance, but of determination. It was the calm before the storm, a fragile, deceptive peace that belied the impending reckoning. In those quiet hours, as the world around him slept unaware, Andrew fortified his resolve. Every minute spent rehearsing, every silent promise he made to himself, built toward a future moment when the facade would finally shatter and the full force of his retribution would be unleashed. The web of intrigue. What Andrew thought was a simple betrayal quickly morphed into something far darker and more complex. As the days passed, he began uncovering unexpected connections that only deepened the mystery and made the truth more elusive. What he initially believed was a personal affair between Isabella and another man began to take on a new shape, a web of intrigue that extended far beyond the boundaries of their relationship. It started subtly. One evening, as Isabella returned from one of her late-night outings, Andrew noticed an unfamiliar text notification on her phone. He'd started to become adept at intercepting her messages, just enough to spot anything that was curious or out of place. This one, however, stood out. The sender's name was unfamiliar, and the cryptic message, "The plan is in motion, everything's set," was loaded with an unnerving implication he couldn't yet decipher. The following day, as Isabella prepared to leave the house, Andrew decided to follow her. As cautious as he was, he needed more answers, and he was prepared to risk whatever it took. His car kept a safe distance behind her as she drove through the streets, eventually leading him to a small bookstore on the fringe of town. There, instead of heading into the store, she walked toward a nondescript van parked along the side of the road where a man was waiting. Neither exchanged words, but their eyes locked in an exchange that Andrew would have missed had he blinked. It wasn't just a clandestine meeting, it was a calculated exchange, and this man was clearly an ally. At that moment, the foundation of Andrew's understanding of the betrayal cracked. It wasn't just one lover. There had to be something more, something far deeper. His thoughts whirled, buoyed by the uncertainty of who these new players were and why they were so involved in Isabella's secret life. The next piece of the puzzle fell into place when an old acquaintance, Emma, contacted Andrew out of the blue. She'd always been on the periphery of his life, an old college friend he'd lost touch with for years. But Emma's unexpected reach-out seemed a little unnerving after all he had uncovered about Isabella's activities. In their conversation, Emma's tone was oddly elusive, and she skirted around every question about Isabella. The feeling of unease continued to grow as Andrew began to connect the dots between Emma, the mysterious man he had witnessed, and other whispers he had overheard during his increasingly suspicious observances. His initial suspicion that Isabella was merely involved in an affair took on a new dimension. These strange connections suggested organized deceit, a group effort to obscure the truth, and Andrew realized that the betrayal might not even stem from a haphazard, unmet whim or chaotic passion. It was bigger, deliberate, planned, and coordinated among several people, including those from his own life. The realization struck him with both awe and dread. The plot had gotten much deeper than he could have imagined. Not only was Isabella hiding an emotional affair, but the betrayal was also multiplied by a network of hidden ties, shady deals, and long-standing connections. Everyone seemed part of a well-organized operation, maneuvering behind the scenes as Andrew's vengeful plans grew increasingly complicated. And yet, even as he felt the gravity of what he'd discovered, Andrew couldn't help but marvel at how well curated this deception was. That was the problem. It wasn't just Isabella's lies he had to untangle, but the entire network of intrigue woven around him. His confrontation and plans for retaliation would have to reckon with more than just Isabella's betrayal. Now, he had to consider who else might be involved and what dangers they might pose. The web was no longer something he could simply unravel on his own. His revenge would have to be wider, more intricate, and far more far-reaching than he had ever anticipated. For now, Andrew kept his suspicions quiet, watching and waiting. The real twisted game of deception had only just begun. Gedurende 33 seconden. The web of intrigue. As Andrew delved deeper into his dossier, a subtle pattern began to emerge that shattered the simplicity of the betrayal he once suspected. The evidence, once confined to whispered texts and blurry snapshots, now started to reveal hidden alliances that connected Isabella to an intricate network of secrecy. At first, it was just a series of unexplained phone calls and unexpected meetings. But soon, the familiar facade of isolation crumbled, exposing a tangled web of intrigue that involved both strangers and those he had once trusted. One evening, while re-examining a set of audio recordings captured on a particularly silent night, Andrew detected an unfamiliar voice interlaced with Isabella's hushed tones. The voice, smooth yet laced with urgency, spoke of precise plans and coded rendezvous. Its presence suggested that Isabella's secret life was not a solitary affair. It was a coordinated operation, and she had an accomplice working behind the scenes. The realization sent a chill through Andrew, for it wasn't just a betrayal of love, but a conspiracy of deceit. Following this new lead, Andrew began cross-referencing call logs, timestamps, and even the locations hinted at in her messages. One perplexing phone record revealed a series of rapid transfers between numbers that, on the surface, appeared unrelated. However, upon closer inspection, he discovered that one of those numbers was registered to a mutual acquaintance, a person he had once considered a friend. The bitter irony of it all struck him hard. Someone from within his trusted circle might have been complicit, acting as a conduit for Isabella's clandestine encounters. Further deepening the mystery were a series of ambiguous social media posts on Isabella's account. Once a testament to their shared life, her posts had morphed into cryptic messages alluding to secret meetings. A particular post, with its vague caption and a backdrop of a dimly lit cafe, resonated with Andrew. He recalled a night when he had seen her hastily leave that very spot with an unfamiliar figure, a memory that now aligned disturbingly with the online clues. As Andrew pieced these fragments together, the scope of the deception widened. The once clear narrative of a simple affair was now a multifaceted puzzle, a network of secrets involving unexpected allies and hidden agendas. With each new connection, his plan for revenge became increasingly complicated. The realization that Isabella was entangled in a broader scheme of betrayal added layers of both shock and anger to his resolve. In the midst of this unfolding drama, Andrew felt a turbulent mix of disbelief and steely determination. The web of intrigue that Isabella had woven was vast, implicating not only her but also those who had shared their lives with him. This revelation raised the stakes of the impending confrontation, hinting that exposing her treachery might unravel more than just their personal history. It could shatter the very foundations of trust in his world. With every new piece of evidence, The stage was set for a showdown that promised to expose the full extent of deception lurking beneath the surface. Setting the perfect trap. After weeks of relentless investigation and sleepless nights spent poring over every detail, Andrew knew the moment of reckoning was imminent. With his dossier of damning evidence in hand, he meticulously crafted a plan to expose Isabella's hidden life, an elaborate trap designed to leave no room for denial. In the quiet solitude of his study, Andrew arranged his thoughts like pieces on a chessboard. Every meeting, every conversation, and every social encounter had a role to play in his strategy. He began by selecting a venue that struck the perfect balance between intimacy and public exposure, a discreet lounge known for its tasteful ambiance and a clientele of mutual acquaintances. This setting would serve as the stage where the threads of deception would finally unravel. Andrew covertly reached out to a trusted friend who, though unaware of the full extent of Isabella's betrayal, had always been part of their social circle. He explained the situation in hushed tones, urging the friend to attend the gathering that very evening. The plan was simple yet audacious: orchestrate an environment where casual conversation could lead to the inevitable confrontation, and where every subtle clue could be brought to light in a public setting. As the night unfolded, Andrew moved with deliberate calm. He mingled effortlessly, his face a mask of congeniality, all while keeping a keen eye on Isabella. Every interaction was calculated. With a few well-placed questions, he steered the conversation toward topics of loyalty, trust, and the occasional slip of the tongue in secret affairs. His voice remained measured, yet each word was laced with the underlying tension of his hidden agenda. At a prearranged moment, Andrew signaled his friend, who began to casually reference the peculiar behavior Isabella had exhibited over recent weeks. The conversation slowly shifted. Intrigued murmurs rippled through the group as more subtle hints were dropped. Then, with the precision of a master strategist, Andrew unveiled his dossier. In a series of measured, deliberate steps, he displayed the evidence, a series of screenshots, blurred photos, and snippets of recorded conversations, each one a nail in the coffin of the carefully constructed lies. The room fell into a heavy silence as the truth spilled out, piece by piece. Isabella's carefully guarded world of secrets and hidden rendezvous began to crumble in the eyes of their shocked friends. Every detail, every secret message now stood exposed for all to see. In that charged moment, Andrew's trap had been set perfectly, a high-stakes game of cat and mouse that was now drawing to its explosive climax. The moment of reckoning. The tension that had been simmering for weeks finally reached its boiling point one cool, crisp evening at the upscale lounge that Andrew had chosen as the stage for his final act. The venue, usually filled with light chatter and clinking glasses, now buzzed with an undercurrent of apprehension as mutual friends gathered for what was billed as a casual get-together. Andrew moved through the crowd with a measured calm, his eyes fixed on Isabella, who appeared increasingly uneasy as the night progressed. As the evening wore on, Andrew excused himself momentarily, disappearing into a quiet corner of the lounge. When he returned, he carried with him a folder, thick with pages of annotated screenshots, blurry photographs, and discreet audio recordings. His heart pounded with a mix of dread and resolve, but his face remained impassive, a mask perfected over weeks of careful pretense. Gathering the attention of the room with a quiet but authoritative tone, he announced, "I have something important to share with all of you." A hush fell over the group. Friends who had once laughed easily now exchanged confused and concerned glances. Isabella's eyes widened in silent alarm as Andrew began methodically unveiling the evidence. One by one, he displayed the messages that hinted at secret rendezvous, the photographs that caught her in moments of dubious intimacy, and the recordings that captured hushed, coded conversations. With every piece laid bare, the fabric of her carefully constructed facade began to tear. "Isabella," Andrew said, his voice steady and clear, "I've spent the past few weeks trying to understand these inconsistencies, these hidden truths. And now, with all of you here, I must ask, how many lies have you told? How deep does this deception run?" His words hung in the air, punctuating the stunned silence that followed. The crowd's reaction was instantaneous, a blend of shock, disbelief, and sympathetic murmurs. Some looked at Isabella with eyes full of betrayal, others with pity as they realized the complexity of the situation. Isabella's composure faltered, her face drained of color as she stumbled for a response. I don't understand," she managed, her voice wavering. But the evidence was irrefutable. Andrew's dossier, meticulously compiled, left little room for denial. In that charged moment, the illusions Isabella had so carefully maintained shattered completely. Her desperate attempts at explanation fell flat, as every hidden truth converged into one undeniable reality. Friends began asking questions, voices trembling with the mix of outrage and sorrow that betrayal invariably brings. Isabella, now exposed and scrambling for an explanation, could only offer halting defenses that crumbled under the weight of the incontrovertible facts. The moment of reckoning had arrived, a dramatic climax where hidden truths, long suppressed, were brought into the unforgiving light of public scrutiny. In that instant, Andrew reclaimed not only his dignity, but also the narrative of his own life, leaving Isabella to face the consequences of a web of deceit that could no longer be concealed. In the quiet that followed the storm, the reverberations of that fateful night continued to echo in Andrew's life. The confrontation had left behind more than shattered illusions. It had cleaved a deep and irreparable divide in the fabric of trust that once bound his world together. Now, in the somber aftermath, Andrew found himself grappling not only with the fallout of Isabella's exposure, but also with the heavy toll that his quest for revenge had exacted on his soul. In the days and weeks after the dramatic showdown at the lounge, Andrew wandered through a landscape of mixed emotions. Friends who had once laughed with him now regarded him with a blend of awe and pity. Their whispered condolences and measured praise for his courage in unmasking the truth were bittersweet. They could not erase the feeling that something precious had been lost in the process. The public spectacle of betrayal had, in one fell swoop, destroyed the vestiges of a shared past, leaving behind only the raw wounds of deceit. At night, in the solitude of his apartment, Andrew would sit at his desk and revisit the evidence he had so painstakingly compiled. The screenshots, blurry photos, and recorded whispers of conversation lay spread out before him like relics of a painful history. Each piece, once a source of burning anger and a call to retribution, now evoked a deep sadness, a reminder that the cost of vengeance was far steeper than he had ever anticipated. The satisfaction of having exposed the hidden alliances and secret liaisons was tainted by the unmistakable sting of loneliness and regret. During quiet walks through the city's dimly lit streets, Andrew's mind replayed the final confrontation. He remembered the shock and disbelief in the eyes of their mutual friends, the crumbling of Isabella's carefully constructed facade, and the palpable silence that followed his damning revelations. In that silence, he recognized that while he had reclaimed his dignity, he had also surrendered a part of his innocence. The thrill of victory was shadowed by the realization that no act of retribution, however meticulously executed, could bring back the lost trust or heal the deeper scars of betrayal. Slowly, as time stretched on, Andrew began the arduous process of rebuilding himself. He sought refuge in the routine of daily life. Morning coffees, quiet afternoons in the park, and reflective evenings where he allowed himself to mourn the life he once knew. The memories of Isabella, once vivid and filled with promise, had transformed into gentle reminders of a lesson learned, that vengeance, while offering a fleeting sense of justice, invariably leaves behind an indelible mark. In embracing his pain, Andrew discovered a quiet resilience. The price of retribution was high, and the scars would forever serve as a testament to the complexities of love, trust, and betrayal. Yet within those scars lay the seeds of a new beginning, a chance to forge a future defined not by the bitterness of the past, but by the hard-won wisdom of survival and self-discovery.